Hey, and welcome back to Good Marketing with Stephanie. Today, we've got an agency edit for you that if you're anything like me or anything like any of the other solopreneurs and small business owners I know, you may need to hear. If you've been running an agency or freelancing over the last year, let's just say it out loud. 2025 was weird. Between economic uncertainty, shifting client budgets, whiplash from AI, and yes, tariffs and general economic chaos, a lot of smart, capable business owners found themselves asking, is it just me, or is this harder than it used to be? On a recent episode, I talked with Astro Metalcraft's Amy Ross about how tariffs were impacting businesses in ways marketers don't think about. But today, I want to zoom out. Because whether tariffs hit your clients directly or not, the ripple effects of economic uncertainty show up everywhere. This episode is for agency owners and freelancers who made it through 2025, maybe bruised, maybe frustrated, but they're still standing, and they want to make smarter, calmer, more intentional decisions going into 2026. I want to talk about what the tough moments actually teach us, why clarity of vision matters more now than ever, and a couple of potentially unsexy but critical things that separate businesses that survive from businesses that scale. So let's get into it. I want to start off by talking about what the freelance landscape actually looks like in the United States. I've noticed over the last year that I've seen more and more people announcing on LinkedIn that they are starting their own adventure as a freelancer or a solopreneur. And I celebrate that. I think that it's exciting. I think that it's something a lot of people, especially in the marketing and communications, PR in this space, that people want to pursue at some point in their career. Everybody in these roles tends to be pretty creative. We have big ambitions. We have big dreams. We have our own ways of working, our own approaches, our own ideas. And being a freelancer or having your own small agency gives you the freedom and flexibility to use those qualities and take the approach that you think is best. And a lot of people have been doing this. And frankly, projections show that a lot more are going to be doing this over the next couple of years. So as of 2023 in the US, 38% of the workforce, that's 64 million people, did freelance work. And that was in 2023. Obviously, now we're at the beginning of 2026. So what are the numbers telling us for this year and beyond? Well, projections suggest that the number of freelancers in the United States will actually reach over 90 million by 2028. And that's just 2 short years away. Those numbers come from a 2023 study from Upwork Research Institute. And I'm curious what they'd have to say now in terms of, hey, are there more freelancers than you expected, or are we basically on track? But here's the good news. According to the Digital Marketing Institute, nearly half, or 49% of businesses rely on freelancers to fill skills gaps. And 48% of CEOs plan to boost freelance hiring to leverage agile talent. So what does that mean? Well, in a marketing and communications capacity, it means that there is a lot of work to be done. And yes, certainly tools like ChatGPT and other LLMs have helped marketers and communicators really accelerate their work and improve their overall efficiency within their work. Yet there are still these important skill gaps. There are still these critical pieces of work that need to be done that, unfortunately, shrinking marketing teams are not able to achieve. And so we can bring freelancers in to help supplement the work that your amazing teams are already doing. At the same time, for freelancers, it's not always easy. It's a constant hustle to try to find new clients. It's a constant learning experience as a freelancer or as a small business owner, because you're really stepping into a brand new set of skills that you may not have honed when you had a full-time job. When you had a full-time job, your job as a marketer, your job as a communicator or a writer or a designer or whatever it was, that was your job. Your job was not also to figure out how to build a pipeline for your business. It was not figuring out what your pricing strategy should be. There are all these aspects of having your own business that really, it's school of hard knocks to learn, and you can have really great mentors. In fact, I highly, highly recommend that. There are a lot of resources out there to help small business owners, whether that's education online, groups like SCORE in the United States that provide mentorship to small business owners, and locally in terms of economic development and the resources that your local city or town would be able to provide you. So there are a lot of resources out there, but still you're stepping into a skill set that's going to feel very new, very uncomfortable, and it's something that takes a long time to learn. And I'm not sitting here saying I've learned everything about it. I certainly have not. I learn something new every single day in my role leading like marketing. And I find it very, very exciting, which I know most of the people listening to this episode, right? If you're considering getting into freelancing, or you already are freelancing, or you have a small marketing firm, you're probably like, yes, I get it. I love the challenge. I love learning something new. But it's important to cover the fact that there are some serious, serious highs and some serious, serious lows in business ownership. And maybe the most common, most shared fundamental experience I know of in this space is when you as a freelancer or a small business owner, you have those bad days where you say to yourself, you know what, I should just get a full-time job. It would be easier. But the question is, would it be better? And I actually had a conversation about this just today. I had a little coffee date in Richmond City. And I was talking to someone else who I know in the freelance space who had said this exact thing to me, that sometimes she just thinks, I should just look for a full-time job, just because it can be so challenging to find new clients. It can be hard to do business development when it's not something that comes naturally to you. But the question really comes down to whether or not taking a full-time job and leaving what you've built, leaving this sort of self-set work schedule, this very, depending on your personality, something that's really, really exciting and fulfilling, leaving that behind to go work for someone else. I think that is a quintessential challenge that every single freelancer faces. It's a question every single freelancer asks themselves. And I don't think that LinkedIn is particularly helpful necessarily for those freelancers and small agency owners who are in that valley, because there's peaks and valleys. I don't necessarily think LinkedIn is a representative of the worst days on the job. I think it's certainly representative of the best days. You will see your peers on LinkedIn talking about how they've achieved, $3 million in revenue or something like that, something that when you're first starting out may not seem attainable to you. But you have to remember that people will always share the hits on social media. They're not necessarily going to share the bad times. So when you find yourself thinking everyone else is making progress, everyone else is making more money, everyone else is getting new clients, that is not the reality for many, many freelancers. And 2025 in particular was a difficult year, not just for freelancers, not just for small agencies, but in businesses generally. We saw a lot of uncertainty happening, and when there's uncertainty, businesses scale back on investments. That does not mean that the need is not there or that the need will never come back, but we have to be adaptable. We have to be flexible during these times of uncertainty, as hard as that may be. And as far as building your own book of business and thinking about how you're going to market yourself and sell your services and sell your personal brand, I want to pull in a quote from the recent podcast interview I did with Emmy Ross from Astro Metalcraft, where she had a really great bit of insight on those ebbs and flows in business and what, as a marketer, marketing your own business, the question that you need to ask yourself. We'll play that clip now.
It's nice to be in a flow, but then also be able to reflect back on those ebbs. For example, 2023 was not a great year for us, and to look back and say, okay, that was a tough year, but hey, look where we are today and look where we're going. What are we doing to not get in that same situation? And, hard times are going to come again, but making sure that we're prepared and having that future mindset of, what are we doing to grow and not survive is really important.
To me, Emmy's quote really emphasizes the importance of adaptability, flexibility, the desire to learn, and most importantly of all, the willingness not to give up. And I really want to focus in on this idea of learning, especially learning from the low points and the difficulties. It's easy to learn something from the high point. Hey, you just won a new client. Awesome. Yay. Okay. How can I repeat that? Oh, you just got a really great media hit. Excellent. Okay, let's keep it coming. Everybody wants to learn from the good things, right? Maybe we don't want to confront the bad things quite as much. Maybe we don't want to confront the failures quite as much. But the truth is there is so much to be learned from the hard things that we go through. And last weekend, I was in New York trying on my wedding dress. And the owner of the salon that I went to, which was Crystal Bridal Salon, I highly, highly recommend it in Manhattan. This woman is absolutely amazing. She had the best attitude, and we got to talking about business ownership because she's been running this salon now for about 12 years. She has a location in Manhattan. She has a location in Brooklyn. And what she told me is that in her first few years of business ownership, she used to take everything so personally. And the way she described it was that she would almost take it in to her body, like really, truly internalizing the difficulties and the challenges. And, whether that was a difficult customer or it was one of those months where cash flow was tight or whatever that challenge was, and she was just taking it all within herself. And I think we all know where that road leads, right? It leads to burnout. It leads to unhappiness. It leads to anxiety, depression. It doesn't really lead to anywhere good unless you decide to take ownership of those moments and learn something from them. And what Marina shared with me is that when those difficult times would arise, again, whether that was maybe a negative interaction or it was a challenge on the floor or something like that, she always asks herself, what do I learn from this? She sees everything as a lesson. She sees everything as an opportunity to learn and to grow. And I loved how she phrased that. I loved how she shared her perspective and how that's changed over 12 years of business ownership. I really found it amazing because I've had my own difficulties in the last year. Of course, that's not what you see me posting about on LinkedIn, right? Because that's not what we do on social media. That's not what we put out there. But I think that all of us, yes, we encounter common challenges, but it's what we learn from those challenges and how we apply that in our business moving forward that really, really matters. And a good example of this could be when you're first starting out and you're really, really eager for business, you might say yes to everything. And pretty quickly, you'll end up saying yes to a situation that's really not ideal for you, either based on your skill set, your ways of working, your personality. And that's okay, right? Everybody's different. And there's so many businesses out there. There's so much work out there. But that doesn't mean that every single client is going to be right for you. So when inevitably that situation happens to you and either you decide or the client decides, hey, this isn't working for me anymore, you have to ask yourself, what did I learn from the experience? What can I do differently next time? And that's really what Marina gave me. Instead of internalizing it, taking it inside and saying, I failed, I did something wrong. It's looking at that situation impersonally and saying, okay, these were the 3 things that maybe indicated to me that this would not be the best fit that I ignored. Here's how I want to change that moving forward. Here are the values that I hold that I want my clients to reflect. Here's my standard operating procedure to make sure that I'm getting my work done in a timely manner. Here's how I'm going to structure my offering and structure my outcomes so that I am always delivering on what I'm promising. Or conversely, so the client is always delivering what's needed for me to be successful. It's just taking those difficult times, those challenges, those potential failures, and thinking about how you can do better in the future. The next thing I really want to talk about is getting clear on your vision. And this has been a big focus for me. I talk about it in my small business group. I think about it constantly. And it is the book called Traction by Gino Wickman. And I'm sure that some of the people listening to this podcast are going to be familiar with that, probably going to have some heads nodding along. But if you've never heard of it, you need to go and download it right now as an audiobook. Listen to it when you're out for a walk or at the gym. Get the physical book, sit down and read it. It will help you so much. And even though Traction is, for a business that might be a little bit larger than you, I still think that it can help so much with getting clear on where you are going and how you are going to get there. So what you get out of this book, Traction, is actually the framework for the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. And EOS has been used by thousands of companies since this book and this system came out. And it ultimately can help you significantly increase your revenue. Some users see up to 18% revenue growth over 3 years, and profit margins can improve by 2 to 5 percentage points, which really is significant when you are a freelancer or a small agency, and every dollar counts. I think with Traction as well, it's important to point out the importance of having a great accountant as well. I'm lucky enough to have an accountant who, for a monthly fee, acts as a sort of fractional CFO for me. So when I have a question about, should I invest in this here? Does this make sense there? She is there to provide that sort of financial strategy and outlook that I need to be successful in my business and personally. Because when you are just starting out, right, these businesses are self-funded. We're not getting venture capital. We're not, necessarily going out and getting $1 million business loans. That's just not really how these kind of businesses start. So I can't stress the value of that enough, to have someone who is an objective outside party who is very good with numbers and math and financial strategy to help you make those decisions. Because again, similar to the business development and sales aspect, client acquisition, accounting is an entirely separate skill set that most creatives, I'm sure, are not necessarily up to speed on. So I can't recommend that enough. But when it comes to the accountant and when it comes to EOS and Traction, I want to give you a scenario to show you why it's so important to implement something like this within your business if you want to grow sustainably. So let's say you have a small digital marketing firm. You're the owner, you're an S Corp, you have 3 part-time employees. Let's say for now you're doing $250,000 in annual revenue. So you take a salary of $100,000 and your 3 part-time employees are at a cost of $2,500 a month each. So that's about $30,000 a year. Then you have an additional $2,500 per month in expenses for software subscriptions, employer, tax costs, business meals, etc. at $30,000 a year. So that would leave you after payroll and expenses with a profit of $30,000 and a profit margin of 12%. Now, that's certainly not terrible, and that's $30,000 extra dollars in your business's pocket or in your pocket. But with EOS and a good accountant, you could strategically improve your profit margins by up to 5 percentage points, as I mentioned earlier. And in this scenario, that would represent a $12,500 gain in profit. Just nothing to sneeze at, again, for a small business owner, where every single dollar counts. And there's a couple of ways that you can do this. So you can look at pricing changes. You can look at the efficiency of your labor and labor costs. You can audit your expenses. You can evaluate your client mix and kind of figure out what adjustments you need to make there in order to make your business more profitable and to make the hours you spend working in your business more profitable. And again, this is something that EOS can help you do. This is also something that a good accountant can help you do. A good business strategy can help you do. But the most important thing is that you think about it. Now, I'm not an accountant, so certainly please do not take this scenario that I'm giving or any of this advice as, you know, actual legitimate accounting advice. Again, I'm not an accountant, but this is just a very simple scenario where you can see, okay, I'm making this much and this is what my current profit margin is. I want to increase it. How can I do that? And that's a great way to set a goal for yourself. So if we look back over the course of this entire conversation, I'm talking about setting a goal, right? Goals are things, especially when we get into a new year, that really, really excite everybody. We look at the new year as a new opportunity to grow personally and professionally, but you're not going to be able to do that if you can't look back and learn from the things that did not work. And I'm not saying only focus on the negatives. Look at the things you did well too. Look at the things that worked out great and think about how you can do more of that, right? That's a goal too. Start, stop, continue. I talked about that with Lisa Zwickel on her recent episode of Good Marketing with Stephanie. But the most important thing is that you make time to look back and you make time to learn. And yes, last year, 2025, it was a weird year for everybody. Most people I know had a down year in 2025. And that's to be expected when there is a lot of turbulence going on in the economy. But that doesn't mean that you have to give up. It just means that you need to get wise and you need to be adaptable. So if 2025 taught us anything, it's this. The low points matter just as much as the wins. It's easy to learn from the growth years, but it's harder and far more valuable to learn from the moments when things slow down, when they fall apart, or they don't go the way you planned, which happens a lot. Those moments force you to look at your systems, your assumptions, and honestly, your leadership. So going into 2026, guys, clarity is not optional. If you don't know where your business is going, you'll spend the year reacting instead of building. And that's why frameworks like Traction and EOS resonate. They force you to define your vision, align your priorities, and actually execute instead of just spinning your wheels and chasing the next shiny object, which is another common thing, trust me. And finally, let me say this plainly. A great accountant is not a luxury. It's one of the highest ROI relationships you can have as a business owner. The right accountant does not just tell you how much to pay in taxes. They can help you make better decisions, avoid expensive mistakes, and sleep at night knowing you actually understand and have ownership of your numbers. So 2026, it doesn't need to be louder, it doesn't need to be faster, it doesn't need to be more complicated. It actually needs to be simpler, clearer, steadier, and more intentional. So if this episode helped you think differently about how you're approaching the year ahead, I'd love for you to share it with another agency owner or freelancer who could use a reset. And thanks so much for listening, guys. I'll see you in the next episode of Good Marketing with Stephanie. Until then, make sure you give this podcast a subscribe wherever you're watching, whether that's or listening, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Share it on social media, share it with your friends, sign up for our email updates, and stay in touch with us. Send us an email at podcast@lankmarketing.com. If you're interested in being on the show or if you have a great idea for a topic, please engage with us. We absolutely welcome that. And we really look forward to sharing more with you guys in 2026. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time on Good Marketing with Stephanie.